Hello, everybody.
Yeah,
Judy,
well,
we've got a lovely room.
wonderful, wonderful. Welcome, everybody. This is the August 17th, 2023 Edgewalker Cafe. And today we're going to have a community discussion on wellness and well-being. And we're so happy to have you here. It's my great pleasure to introduce our Senior Associate of Edgewalkers International, Susan Furness, who has been a part of Edgewalkers since the very beginning, as well as Patricia Campanile has been, and we have several other associates and senior associates with us today, as well as old friends and new friends. And we're so glad to have you with us. So welcome, and over to you, Susan.
Judy, thank you as always. And indeed, a true appreciation to you because, of course, it was you and your wisdom of really feeling and knowing that you needed to write the book Edgewalkers in 2006, that indeed has us all here in the room today. Mm-hmm. And just as we talk about being in the room today, I just want to say, in honor of wellness and well-being of when we show up, I'm staying with some friends. I just arrived last night, and I'm balancing on their piano because there wasn't a desk space, and I can feel the sun just coming, beating straight through to me. So I can't even see the screen properly at the minute. So just bear with me. I'm just going to know that you're all there, and I haven't got a clue. I honestly can't see with the sun coming so brightly into my face. But wow, the well-being and the wellness of the sun, and all that warmth of the sun. When it's not there, we wish it was, dear sun. And when it's here in abundance, it can get quite hot under the collar, can't it? And today, our conversation, which indeed all of you, I really encourage you to join in today. We don't have a guest speaker, which we usually do. Well, actually, that's quite incorrect. We do have guest speakers, and we have now 22 of you in the room. And so you're all here today. We'd love to hear your voice. And so on this infinite walk to well-being, we would like to, really unpick and unravel, what well-being means at any point in our lives, at the points where just being present gives us a sense of wellness, or indeed being present gives us real anxiety about wellness and well-being. And some of you may have noticed, in fact, on the social media posting that I was sort of mooting and talking about, oh, hang on, is there actually a difference between well-being and wellness? What is that difference? So I feel that's sort of something I'd love to unpick. And of course, as we just said, we are in the room because of Edgewalkers, and because, as Judy, you said in the byline of the book, Edgewalkers is about individuals and organizations that take risks and build bridges and always break new ground. And within Edgewalkers, Judy identified 5 qualities of being and 5 skills. And I love looking at the qualities and skills and seeing how they work and weave their way into the day or into the topic. And in fact, DC during Corona, I did a wonderful well-being conversation with a corporate group, an European group. Actually, I think they might even also have a very big presence in the States, called Catalina. And Judy, I don't know if I ever mentioned to you, but we identified, we plucked out 5 of the qualities of being and the skills, and we worked with them. And one of them was self-awareness, which is one of our qualities of being, and passion and vision. And then we flipped over to the skills and looked at the skills of sensing the future and the skill of focusing. And we sort of talked about well-being around those 5 guiding words: self-awareness, passion, vision, sensing the future, and focusing. And so maybe that's where we might find ourselves going today. But you know, when we are on the edge and we want to move into that leading edge, indeed, we cross bridges, don't we? And today, in order to help us move into that space and we all find our voice, I've invited someone in the room, and I cannot hardly see my could you wave, Mary Rita, because I can just see a little wave. I can see you as well, Elelda. Thank you very much for waving too. How are you? Hi, Mary Rita, I can see you there. Mary Rita McGuire is in the room as well. And Mary Rita is, has very kindly, thank you, Mary Rita, said that she will bridge us into the space of all finding our voice. And Mary Rita has recently founded a philosophy called Mysterium. And Mysterium is, well, it has a passion, and Mysterium's passion is to take transpersonal to the streets, a bit like our passion as Edgewalkers is to take the Edgewalker conversation to the speak. And transpersonal is all about those states of consciousness and the areas that actually go beyond our personal identity. And of course, there's a lot more to it. Mary Rita, how about you come in and you just give us a little bridge into this conversation around well-being and wellness. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Susan, and thank you to everyone here for giving me this opportunity to bridge into what I feel is a timely conversation, a conversation that's starting to seed into this coming year and into 2024 and beyond. And this is where I think transpersonal ways of being and transpersonal awareness really sits, that sense of going beyond self and opening the bridge and crossing the bridge into a conversation that we're going to have today. And one of the practices that I use in Mysterium is a transitional pause. And the reason I use this pause is often we are coming maybe from our supper, or we've just driven in, you know, we've parked the car. So half of us is maybe somewhere else. And so it's all about coming into space and feeling grounded. And that's what I'd really like to invite everyone in the space to do today. So I would first invite you to make sure both your feet are planted firmly on the ground, and just to gently close your eyes and take a few deep breaths. And then just returning to the natural rhythm of the breath, and it will act as an anchor for you, keeping you in the present moment. And then just taking a moment to honor the space created today. And this is a sacred space and a safe space, a container to hold interesting and diverse conversations, that we bring with us different lenses along the perspectives of well-being and wellness. And taking a moment to honor yourself for showing up for this conversation and being in this community today. And I invite you to call in any presences or energies, archetypes, angels or talismans that you feel may support this conversation as we move into being of wellness and well-being, and honoring the leading Edgewalkers, those who are taking us to the edge of the unknown in this space today. And then gently returning to the breath. And when you feel ready, I invite you to make some small movements with the body. And when you feel ready, I invite you to open your eyes. And I would like to pass back to the wonderful Susan Furness.
Bless you, Mary Rita, and bless all of you in the room. And thank you very much for passing back to me a little talking stick for the minute. So, goodness, so well-being and wellness, are they one of the same? Are they different? You know, I also studied and certified as a well-being coach with Raw Horizons Academy in 2019. And I was reminded by Dr. Claire Maguire, who leads that academy, that indeed the two words can be used quite interchangeably, and yet there is a distinction. And she noted when we were chatting, and actually, if you go into LinkedIn, they even kindly put it on a LinkedIn post that well-being and wellness can have a dance with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you know, that triangle, the hierarchy of needs, where on a basic need and on a physiological level, perhaps that's where wellness is, you know, where there's maybe a duty of care to ensure that steps are taken to prevent illness, injury, or an unsavory, you know, energetic that causes anxiety, etc. And that perhaps higher up Maslow's hierarchy of needs, higher up his triangle to the peak, you know, from physiological up to self-fulfillment, that perhaps that's where well-being sits. Perhaps that's where we start looking, Judy, where we look, you know, in and I'm seeing Jim in the room and John in the room and Peggy in the room, where we're coaches also in spiritual intelligence, where we look at the 4 quadrants of our cognitive intelligence, our emotional intelligence, our spiritual intelligence, and indeed our physical intelligence. So is that where well-being sits? So I just gave that little intro just to nowhere, not leading it anywhere, but just because, you know, it seemed quite interesting that you could sit it on such a legacy modeling as Maslow's. So to open it up into the room, has anyone got some thoughts around this dance between well-being and wellness, or whatever comes up? Please take yourself off mute and just come into the room.
Chakri has his hand up.
Oh, do you? Chakri, you're here. How wonderful. Thank you, Judy. Chakri, come in, come off mute. Chakri's always with us from India, I believe. So Chakri, talk to us, please.
Yeah, so I think the beauty of this space for me is essentially in locating myself in my agency and my developing, but also in developing with others. So, and I see how each of you receive the other, and so this is collective murmuration at the best. And so I'm very grateful to be in this space, and that ensures that I'm nourished and I'm taken well. I'm in my well-being space.
Oh, how special, Chakri. And did you get that collective murmuration? Is that what I heard? I mean, how precious is that this collective murmur can help bring us to a place of feeling well and being with each other. Is that Jim's hand up? I'm really having difficulty seeing the screen, but Jim, is that you? Jim
Yes.
Locker.
Yes, it is.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Hello from Lyon, France. You know, I'm I guess a student or whatever of Joseph Campbell, and I really think that well-being includes being able to engage in the fray and to be able to engage with life and all of its aspects from a place of strong self-awareness and personal well-being, in the sense of I'm up for the game. I'm up for working with people that are in distress. I'm up for observing and being present with the joys and sorrows of the world. And I don't see it as a withdrawal, although sometimes we need to withdraw, of course. But I do see it as simply having the capacity to be present for whatever is in front of you, whatever is yours to do. And from a sense of strength, awareness, and joy.
Oh, Jim, I mean, that's thank you so much. I mean, that's so wonderful on many aspects, because I don't know about all of you, but what I sort of heard in the core of that was being in service to others can then just feed back to being in service to self. And that in itself brings this presencing of well-being. And I also loved that bringing in of joy, that indeed, Jim, it brings you to a place of joy. And do you know what? I mean, I've known you for many years, sort of a little bit, we've met only a few times, but from the distance, we see each other many times. And in fact, you do exude joy. And some of you probably know that joy is the acronym for J is for Jesus, O for others, and Y for yourself. J for Jesus, O for others, and Y for yourself. And when I was about 9, a pastor told me that, and it stayed with me and filled with me with such joy for so long. So, Jim, please keep serving. Bless you. And thank you also for recently hosting at Unity, I believe, maybe in Houston, I can't remember, but the spiritual Edgewalker conversation. We
Yeah,
must have.
I did one in Houston at Unity of Houston, and one in San Jose at CSL San Jose, and one in Atlanta in the last 2 months.
Wonderful. Jim, would you come one time on the Edgewalker Cafe and do one for us here?
Sure, if you like. I think you already know the model, don't you?
Well, we all want to hear you. We want you and us in conversation, and all of us, I think, would love to hear. So thank you, Jim, for your service. So, so I'm looking around. Is that Patricia's hand up? No, it's my hand on Patricia's face. Oh,
I'd like to add something, Susan will. Oh, and then Sandra has her hand up.
Wonderful.
As I think about the distinction between wellness and well-being, I think also, and I'm not an expert on this, Jim could probably help us a little bit here more, but I think about states and stages. And wellness to me is something that's a state. There's times when we feel a sense of wellness and times when we don't. And we have several friends who have COVID right now who are not experiencing wellness, but they might be experiencing well-being. It may be that their inner development and practices are such that regardless of what the external world brings, whether it is conflict or virus or fear, there's tragedies, there's so many things the external world could bring, as well as bringing joys. We could experience well-being in all of those situations. We might not experience wellness. That's just my take on it. I'm sort of making it up in the moment as sort of a states and stages, but I just want to throw that out there. So Sandra had her hand up, and then Anna. Sandra, your hand is now down.
Oh no, I think Susan took it down.
And then Anna.
I was about to say the exact same thing, Judy. When I started to muse on when it was first being posted, the topic, what popped to mind instantly for me was my mother, who died a very difficult death from lymphoma, a very long and drawn out death. But it offered her the time to pull herself into a practice that really changed her and brought her into a state of overall well-being in her relationship to the world and her relationship with how she had lived her life and with her spiritual practice, while her wellness was far from well. She was absolutely ravaged by it. So this, to your point, this sense of I physically may not be in wellness, but my internal life and my relationship to life itself is completely in well-being.
Well, bless you, Sandra, and indeed bless Mum. Gives deep thoughts there, and Judy, I mean, thank you too for bringing in, you know, the states and stages. And indeed, of course, there's a trio that is a trinity, isn't it? It's levels, states, and stages, or stages, states, and levels of well-being and wellness. And look how Sandra's mum, you know, really came through to find real well-being, and even in a state, so a high level of well-being, in a high level of not being well, and yet found some of the joy that Jim was talking about, you know, the peace that Jim was talking about. I mean, how awesome is that? Does anyone want to take this here?
Anna has her hand up.
Thank you for telling her. Anna, I can't see you, but please just come in. Anna?
Hello, everybody. I practice traditional Chinese medicine. I'm an acupuncturist, and I'm currently studying a diploma in nutrition, which is called Yang Sheng, which means nurturing life. And for me, it's not so much the difference between the two words of wellness and well-being. It's very much an all-rounded thing. It's a mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical. And there's a writer, a 5-element Chinese medicine writer called Lonnie Jarrett, and he says, if we're truly aligned with our destiny, there will be no disease in the body. And I think, yes, you can have spiritual well-being, as Sandra was talking so beautifully about her mother, but ultimately we want the full rounded, we want physical, mental, spiritual well-being. And it's better to get that, to approach that from a preventative way rather than curing illness. So I think it's a journey through life that we just keep working on. And sometimes we might fall off the path, and other times we're more aligned with it. And that's just life. And so I just wanted to, I just love the interpretation of the word Yang Sheng being sort of nourishing and nurturing life. I wanted to just bring that to the table.
Well, bless you, Anna. You've got lots of nods around the room. So I think we're all just nourished by the very fact that you introduced us to Yang Sheng and the yin and yang and the energy of that. I did look it up when you first mentioned it to me, Anna, as well. Amazing if you all want to if you haven't heard that philosophy before. Anna, how do you spell it? Can you spell it for everybody? Or maybe in the, yeah.
Oh, I can put it in, well, it's just Y-A-N-G and then S-H-E-N-G.
Thank you. Bless you. It's lovely to have you here, Anna. Thank you for coming. I feel so full. Anna and I were nearly sister-in-laws. So but I didn't quite wed her gorgeous brother, and he didn't quite wed me. But we have a lot of well-being and wellness out of it. And so Anna and I have decided to be sisters instead of sisters-in-law. Right, Anna?
Absolutely.
Yes.
It's lovely to be
you.
here.
Yeah, thank you so much, very much.
May I jump in? May I jump in?
Tayanush has her hand up, and then Amy.
Lovely.
Sorry. I'm not seeing where I need to raise my hand, so sorry.
Where? Oh, Amy, there you are. I can now see,
Yes.
now you've spoken, I can see you.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank
come
you.
in, please.
You know, I actually had this conversation last night with an associate. I am an associate in a wellness company. And we talked about the difference between wellness and well-being. And we basically, and what the literature is beginning to say and all of that. And it resonates with what Judy was saying, which in my words would be wellness is about physical, well-being is more than the physical, that you can have well-being and not have and not be physically okay. But that well-being is, I think it's an interesting conversation now, because as the world's consciousness begins to evolve, breaking down the old and for the new to be born, we're recognizing that we're more than physical beings, that we actually operate on many versions of self, which operate from different dimensions. Now that sounds woo-woo, but if you take a look at your day, you know, you have your normal operating place, and then there are moments when your smaller self kicks in, where you say or do things that you are sorry you said or did, and then there are the moments where you're brilliant and wonderful things come out of your mouth that you didn't even know you knew. Right? What you're doing is you're shifting dimensions. You are embodying, you're embodied, so you're present, and then you're opening up to these finer dimensions. And I think that that's what the well-being, that's what is catching people about well-being, that when you shift into that bigger dimension, oh, now you feel the joy, now you feel the love, now you feel the connection between people. That to me is the rebirth that is beginning to come. So that's my 2 cents.
Bless you, Amy. I mean, the 2 cents was mighty valuable, and there's lots and lots and lots of wealth in what you just said. I mean, and again, you know, talking about these dimensions, and you know, the earlier we named as levels, states, and stages, you know, all these mixed dimensions that are coming into play. And indeed, one of our Edgewalker guests a few months ago, a young man called Tariq Nasser, he's around, you know, just going into his 30s, on another podcast that I heard him on, he talked about choice, Amy, and he mentioned that in one day there are over 86,000 seconds we have in a day, in a 24-hour day, and there's more than that. You can look it up quickly now. And that, you know, we make 235 choices around what we're going to eat alone, let alone not knowing, you know, where we're going to be next, as you were saying, Amy, you know, where we're going to find ourselves in a space to need to bring some influence in, or indeed offer influence out. So, you know, really that architecture of choice, that choice architecture as well, seems to play beautifully in there. Thank you so much. There's lots of hands going up. So was it you, Dr. Keona? I think your hand was next. Judy, can you help me just to make sure I'm orchestrating?
Yes,
Yeah.
Keona is next.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much. And I really enjoyed what you mentioned, Amy, and just giving back to the conversation of the difference between being, well-being, and the wellness. I just want to mention, you know, as an emotional intelligence coach, also we work on the states of knowing, doing, and being. And there are three different stages. What we know is not what we do, and what we do is not who we are. So, and I guess I put it also in the chat. Maybe well-being is just another, the wellness is expression of the inner well-being. And when the wellness occurs, is the state of the full well-being. It becomes a status, and it's not a stages anymore. So that was my understanding of the conversation.
Very beautiful. Thank you. You know, isn't it a joy always to know that we don't know what we know until we know it, and we don't have to know it because we can be before we do. So those three, again, a lovely trinity of knowing, doing, and being. Very, very beautiful. I think Val, Judy, did I see Val from Rochester? Val Fowler.
Yes,
How
Val is next. You're doing very good, Susan.
Thank you.
Well, first I'll say this is the only the second Edgewalkers that I have attended, thanks to meeting Judy on in a singing circle. And I believe that what we're hearing and doing is an example of well-being. But I don't think I'm the only one. I can't approach this question without seeing faces and hearing names of people that I've known and walked alongside. And this gives me a help. I've puzzled why it is that there are some people whose wellness is hampered, and they seem not to be able to get beyond that situation. And then I've known others who are beset by problems of any kind, not just physical. And yet there's something about them that speaks of a larger positive reality. The two faces that immediately came to mind were first my father, who I watched over a period of 10 years die of emphysema. And he gradually became a more miserable, frankly, not very nice person. And I was in high school at the time and early college, and was urged to recognize, well, it's not the disease, it's not about me, it's the disease, or it's the medication. And I sort of, that sort of felt like sandpaper to me. But Then I went to the first church I served, and I met Marion, a member of the church who had emphysema worse than my father did, and never smoked a cigarette in her life. And she was one of the kindest, most gracious people that I've known. And that's, I think, when I realized that even in the midst of a lack of wellness, people have the choices to make that we've talked about. But where, it's not enough to say that my father made bad choices or that Marion made good ones. It's a matter, the question for me became, now that I know that difference, what do I do in walking alongside other people who are experiencing the same things? One of whom now is my wife, who's in long-term care and hospice, and is edging toward being overcome by anger and frustration and resentment. What is my role in nurturing that kind of well-being for her? I've been on a personal discipline for the last 3 years in the midst of this discouraging, merciless, graceless world that we seem to be living in, that I don't know, I didn't intentionally, this just came. I came to the decision that I was going to spend some part of every day offering kindness and encouragement to people in whatever way was appropriate. And I have found that as I do that, it's very interesting, the responses of people, because the responses are so positive. It's also very interesting to see that it has given me a sense of calm in the midst of the chaos that I've been living through. So I can't really, personally, I can't put a dividing line between wellness and well-being, but I can be open to making choices and trying to observe where I see well-being whenever it comes. I hope that makes some sense. And I would finally say that the root of the word kindness in Greek originally did not describe people, it described things. In fact, the earliest use I could find for the word that came to be translated kindness was to describe an ox cart in such a way that a farmer might say of that, a person might see that ox cart and say, wow, what dealership did you get that from? And respond, can I take you for a ride? Well, the root meaning of the earliest use of kindness is that which fulfills well the purpose for which it was made. So we don't really have to ask why we were put on this planet, what our life is for, what kind of list of goals we have to make. All we have to do is fulfill the purpose for which we were made, which is to be kind. So that's what I would offer to the conversation.
Val, thank you. Thank you on many counts. First of all, thank you for showing up a second time for Edgewalkers, and we encourage you to come again and again and again and share with us. That was so profound. And indeed, I plan to make this just as much a part of my life as a couple of other things, including the sing around where I met Judy. Oh, that's, I can't tell you how much that's filled my heart with a little bit of Jim's joy. I mean, that's wonderful to hear. And of course, I'm glad you mentioned sing along again and music again, because, you know, that's such a nourishment of the soul, isn't it? And makes us so happy, even when we're in a space of, as you said, you know, working with disease, and I heard, you know, at that very first entry point of your story, you know, the dis-ease with disease and how we can then come in to the space from the center or from either end of the polarities, the dark or the light. you know, and how we, so if we're too far in the light, in the space of disease, is there reality, question mark? And yet if we're too far over to the dark, you know, that anger, that the swell that comes is not necessarily manifesting as the swell of joy. And indeed, we've talked numerous times, Val, about the polarity of fearfulness and fearlessness. And, you know, the fearless leader or the fearless individual perhaps doesn't know what the fearful leader can just feel, or the fearful person can feel. And that is that love and kindness and acts of love and kindness evoke acts of love and kindness in others. And that just becomes a ripple effect. So thank you so much for bringing so much into the room there, Val, and for being of service as you are, and reminding us that the root of well-being, wellness, and indeed the purpose of life is kindness and love. So quite wonderful. Now, I know your hand isn't up, but you indicated in the chat, John, that you could bring something into the room. So John Freeman, can we get you off mute and just ask you to come in wherever the space takes you?
Well, you
Peggy
can.
O'Neill.
I saw Peggy's hand up and I'm wondering whether she should go first, because I might go in a different direction.
Thank you, John. I couldn't see that. Peggy, thank you so much, John. You're a gentleman as always. Peggy. Could you come off mute, dear Peggy? Thank you.
Thank you. So what came to me, or is coming to me as I listen to this, that that maybe wellness is an aspect to each of mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. You know, are we well spiritually? Are we well emotionally? Are we well in our bodies? Are we well, what's the other one? Mentally. And so that's, so just short, but because a lot of discussion about wellness in the body, but maybe looking at wellness as each of those, that we can be well in each of those, and that can support then our well-being overall by being well in each of those 4 dimensions.
Well, thank you again, Peggy. You know, you're a coach also in spiritual intelligence and indeed an Edgewalker facilitator, and of course come from a very heady world of politics and business, I believe. So you've probably seen, you know, the rush and the speed and the energy shifts, you know, from in the polarity space, you know, the dark energies and the light energies, and how and where the nourishment points are. So thank you. I think it was a very good juncture to remind us of those 4 quadrants again, and you know, where we can take our nourishment from. So John, did Peggy open up something? I'm sure she did. Over to you.
Well, yes, she did, but not in the direction that I was maybe thinking that I might go in response to your prompt, which I already have 2 things in my mind, one of which I'll just drop in because a colleague sent me a link to a short clip of Dr. Alberto Fialdo, who's the kind of he propagates the 4 winds, which is a shamanistic approach, comes from South America, and the clip was talking about the perspective, and he has a medical background before he got into all of that, and he was talking about the way that the shamans and the cultures he's worked with, they have a very clear view of disease, which is that as far as they're concerned, what they have to treat when they're looking at disease is they treat people's relationship to nature. And I just wanted to drop that perspective because I think it's one of the things which we potentially do, I know I do, get out of touch with. And so it sits alongside these other dimensions that we've been talking about in terms of wellness. But I'd also, I guess I wanted to pick up on one of the things that you said right at the beginning about the question of sensing the future as an element in our relationship, our wellness, and I just have a question, I suppose, as to how it strikes anybody else, because my perspective is I have less ability than I have ever had to sense what the future holds and what it will be and what we will have to adapt to and how we will need to respond. And so I guess that sits for me in a space of, well, what does it take to be in well-being? If anybody else is experiencing that as an accurate description of the conditions we're in.
Oh, John, thank you. As always, a thought provoker. I mean, you know, I'm going to name you Chief Nudger, because you just always nudge more and more about, you know, how to unravel and think a little deeper and a little wider and a little higher about everything that we talk about. And, you know, sensing the future is indeed the first Edgewalker skill. And quite a while back, it was actually called knowing the future. And Judy knew one night in a dream or somewhere that indeed it was much more about intuition and sensing. So Judy, do you think you could come in, and then we'll go to Lewis and just, you know, answer into your thoughts around our ability to sense the future from different acts in life, but, you know, whether we're 30, 40 or 50, or indeed, you know, that sensing and knowing, and how can we retain the ability to sense? Over to you, Judy.
Thank you. And I want to say goodbye to Jim. Thank you for being here, Jim. Jim left a beautiful quote in the chat. And anybody that wants to save the chat, you can do that before you leave by, in the message box, there's a little place that has 3 dots in the chat message box. And if you click on that just before you leave, it will save the chat to your computer. So there's some wonderful quotes and beautiful things there that you might want to save. Oh, sorry, let me turn off the air conditioner in my camper. I'm camping in Montana outside my sister's house, here to help her wellness and well-being after she's recently broken her arm and had surgery. So the I still struggle, Susan, with the words knowing the future and sensing the future. I think they both have, kind of like wellness and well-being, they both provide us ways to look at our relationship to the future. And Edgewalkers do have an inner knowing, and people have different ways of that knowing things that some people talk about, I know it in my gut, I know it in my heart, or I get a download. They use different languages, and there is this just, I know, even though there's no evidence, even though there's nothing in the world that, like Mel Toomey, my wonderful beloved co-author who passed away a couple of years ago, he would say to know something in the face of no agreement, not necessarily disagreement, but in the face of no agreement, you know it and you act on it, and the world becomes a better place. So there is that knowing that's very important. But then there's another thing that Mel used to say, and that was, what can you sense but not yet see? And I think that's a beautiful coaching question, and a beautiful, even a self-coaching question, if there's such a thing as self-coaching. What can you sense but not yet see? And for some people, it might be, what can you sense but not yet hear? Or what can you sense but not yet feel? You know, there's when we ask ourselves that question, we expand our sensing. I once attended a meditation course that said, close your eyes and listen to what you can hear. Now listen beyond what you can hear. Or look out your window and see. Now see beyond what you see. So there's some practices and ways of expanding both our knowing and our sensing. So thank you for that wonderful question, Susan. And I'm really looking forward to Lewis sharing what he has to share.
Oh, me too. And yes, thank you, Judy. That was a real, John, I hope that sort of has given you some food for thought so that you'll be able to nudge us even more provokingly in the future. And indeed, I do love that seeing beyond. And also, you brought in the other senses there, Judy. Not just the gut brain where we hold, our memory and maybe our instinct. I mean, the jury's out, and our penal intuitive sense. But of course, you mentioned others, what we hear and what we listen. And there are indeed at least 12 clairs that each of us may have one or more, like clairvoyance and clairaudience and clairgustance and clairsentience, etc. So maybe that's a practice for us all later today and into the evening, just to sort of sense into which sense really, really is our leader sense to help us on that bridge into sensing what we know. So, and particularly wellness and well-being. And I'm so thrilled that Lewis has his hand up. Lewis, please come in and speak to us.
It's so wonderful to wait and to hear each person's learning of similar consciousness, but coming through different doors. So let me share 3 things that aren't about me. They're potential learnings for all of us. And they're all very much on the edge rather than falling off the edge. One was after 20 years of well-doing and well-serving, I was given a learning that was just as life-changing as any can be, and that is a Whitewater River accident ended up just virtually removing my left frontal lobe that had been so effective for 20 years. And I was given the opportunity to just be instead of do. And to use a metaphor, in the center of a tornado or a hurricane is total stillness. Well, I discovered that since the mind and the body were no longer able to do anything for 3 years of hospitalized brain injury recovery, I discovered that while I couldn't read, write, walk, talk, play tennis, be a speaker, be a father, be a lover, be anything, I, at the core of all 7 chakras, my soul was 100% well and being in pure light and love and spirit. And that enabled me to never lose that. While every week I learned new synapses, rebuilding the capacity to regain the doingness, but never again without integration with the being and the wellness of spirit. That was an amazing learning. And then just 3 years ago, over the ventilator, when I was predicted to not be able to be brought back by the doctors, I remember being up there with others, and all the others passed. And I remember having the feeling that we have the opportunity sometimes to either let go or not. And I absolutely was clear I could not let go, no matter what the virus was doing. And I was lucky to be at least part of what enabled me to come back. The Western medicine helped, etc., but I'm back. And now somebody else talked about the phases we go through. And for all the last year, I've been saying that in my 75th year, that makes no sense. I'm lucky to feel like I'm 55, not 75. And yesterday being the birthday, I suddenly am open to saying, you know what? The first 25 were all growing. The second 25 were all doing. The third 25 were a mixture of being and doing and new consciousness raised. And now I'm excited to say that the fourth 25 that some of us are in is an opportunity to do and be with such wellness. And all it takes to maintain the wellness that enables the mind and the body to get to 100. And I'm just starting today and hope to be with you for the next 25 years. Thank you. That's all.
Oh, Lewis, I mean, you can see the whole room is smiling, filled with joy. You know, we all want to be around now if you're around. so see what happens. That sort of influence, that energetic that is just so contagious. The contagion of joy and the contagion of love and kindness and the contagion of presence. So yes, we want you here with us for your next 25-year act, and we want all of you with us in the room. So, oh gosh, that honor space in the center of well-being and wellness. So I'm sure I saw a hand go up and now it's gone down. Was that you, Payal, or was that you, Dr. Kayunish, or did it just go down again? Is everyone okay? Oh, I can see Anna and Amy. So, okay, let's go with Anna first, and then Amy will come over to you. Thank you so much. Anna?
Hi, it was just in response to what John said earlier, and I read something a couple of days ago, and I don't know where it was from or anything, but it was about how true peace comes when we let go of not knowing. And that all sort of ties in with the whole concept of living in the present moment. And there's another quote I often use with my patients, is that my life has been full of tragedies and disasters, fortunately most of which have never happened. And I think we can catastrophize, and that unsettles us mentally, spiritually, physically. And I think that the media nowadays encourages that kind of catastrophizing. So it was just, that concept of being able to let go of not knowing and allowing things to unfold, that maybe there's a greater master plan, that I have great faith that all will be well in the end, or at some point. So just to bring that really to the table.
Bless you, Anna. I mean, in fact, not only just it sort of circles back to John, but it brings full circle round to Lewis, because both talked a little bit about letting go, and of course Lewis spoke about the point where he was not going to let go of this life as well. So there's letting go and there's letting go. So it's all everything has a wonderful dance, doesn't it? Letting go of what? But I think it's just a very powerful guide for us, Anna, to sort of really find the power in letting go, and also the power and the blessings in disguise. Blessings are often there even when the chips are down and they're just sort of dressed up as something a little bit nasty, but really there's something really special there for us to learn, as indeed Lewis and others in the room have shared today. Amy, is this a good time for you to come in?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. I think that there is a difference between awareness and insight and information and experiencing. And when Lewis was talking and we all were smiling, for me, it wasn't just his words. it was his essence, it was his being that touched us. So when I look at him, he radiates this energy, you know, and it has certain qualities to it that we resonate with and we welcome. And it is all about the energy, I believe. No, take that back. I know after 40 years of training in this stuff, you know, it's the energetic experience. Einstein said, okay, it's like we have this physical body, then we have an energy body, right? So, you know, you cut off somebody's arm and they still have pain where the arm was, right? And then there's this universal energy field. When we go past our own energy field into the universal, Einstein said that's where all ideas exist. So when we're tapping into that sensing, that knowing, right? We're not in our heads doing that. We've in some way opened up and expanded. Just kind of happens for most people when you're in the shower or after great sex or a good nap or whatever, you know, where you just kind of open up and all of a sudden these ideas are right there. This sensing is right there. This knowing is right there. But it starts with us, instead of contracting and holding ourselves and being in our heads and studying it, is to embody and to open with it. So when I've trained Aikido for 40 years, martial art. I'm not a great martial artist, but what this guy taught, which blew me out, was the inner map, right? To shift your consciousness. And it starts with, where is your attention? Is it out there? Is it in here? You know, what's your center like? Do you have ground? And then there's ki flow and energy flow. When the energy flows out, all of a sudden you have a bigger capacity, you're bigger size, you've shifted to a different character, you know, and that's when you step into that finer version of self where well-being happens and knowing happens and sensing happens. So that's my experience. It's my story. I'm sticking to it till I know something better. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. I mean, Amy was a guest on the Edgewalker Cafe, oh gosh, I don't know, about 9 months ago now. So if you want to listen to what Amy shared with us then, please go onto the website and go in to the cafe recordings, because as you can imagine from what you just shared with us, Amy, or you provoked us again, you know, it's so very rich. And gosh, just thank you for reminding us that we all have an inner map. You know, on this road less traveled, we actually do know what we don't know, and because we know it is with us, and we can tap into that knowing to find that finer sense of self and that wellness sense of self, and the sense of self that is wrapped in well-being, because we very much know that being present and being aware and sensing John, and it brings us into a place of knowing. So thank you, Amy. The Inner Map, The Road Less Traveled. And in fact, The Road Less Traveled was a book, a series written by M. Scott Peck. And the first chapter of that book, the first line is, "Life is difficult, full stop." And then the next paragraph says something like, "And as soon as you realize it isn't anymore." And it isn't anymore because of that inner map. So very, very beautiful. Thank you. And Judy, I'm sort of feeling on time. We're at 5 minutes past the hour. We always go to 15 minutes past on Susan's cafes. But I've got a feeling, Judy, it just feels a really good juncture to pass over to Peggy, who was kindly going to do a capture. What do you think, Judy?
I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, me too. Are you ready for that, Peggy? What did you hear?
Well, I heard a lot. We started, of course, with Mary Rita opening and inviting us into a sacred space, a safe space. And I think we all experienced that beautiful space. And then your question of well-being and wellness opened so much beautiful discussion. Shakri brought in murmurization, I think, murmur,
yes.
Murmur, yeah, a way to nourish our well-being, a space to be in the collective. And Jim brought in the well-being of being able to engage in the fray of life and the capacity to be present in whatever is in front of us. Judy brought in states and stages. Maybe wellness is a state. We feel a sense of wellness. We can experience well-being in all areas. Sandra brought in our mother. So there were several people that brought in relationships and the difference that that disease can make in someone's life to open us to well-being in spite of not being physically well. Anna brought in Yang Xing and the possibility that if we're truly aligned with our destiny, there may be no disease in the body, and it's a journey for us to keep working on. Let's see, I'm probably getting too detailed here. Anyway, so what else is here? Amy brought in, of course, we just heard her beautifully again, but some ideas about the rebirthing that's coming and shifting our dimensions. Let's see, Dr. Kinu, knowing, doing, and being are 3 stages. Maybe a wellness is an expression of inner being. Val, see, said a lot of beautiful things. And that our disease, I think what captured is that our disease doesn't have to determine our well-being, that it can be an opportunity, another opportunity for us to express well-being in spite of
express well-being, you're right, and to feel that sense of nourishment, not the sense of depletion. Yeah.
And he brought in the root of the word kindness, that which fulfills what the purpose for which it is made, and brought in maybe that's how we were made. And I'm sensing maybe I've said enough here, so, but I haven't covered everybody, but and then Judy brought in, I'll close with this, a possibility for all of us to expand our sensing by asking ourselves, what can you sense but not see? What can you hear but not yet hear? What can you feel but not yet feel? And to expand our ability to sense. So I'll leave it with that. It's been a beautiful, incredibly beautiful, rich conversation and communication from all of us today.
Thank you. I mean, Peggy, you just really modeled the gift of listening, and you listened so well. Thank you very much. And you also always model, I think, the joy that color brings when you come into the room dressed in your autumn colors. I mean, you always just look so gorgeous. And I remember that transition when I think you and Judy went off to get your color analysis done, and you came back, you know, still as the gorgeous Judy. I don't think you were together, but Judy and Peggy, but there you were, wrapped in the colors that really brought out your essence. And of course, color is a wonderful language, isn't it? A language of wellness as well, that's all around us. So I'm just going to now sort of draw us into a close, and Judy will talk a little bit for us about the Edgewalker News, but I just wanted to honor, you know, everyone in the room. Alida, thank you so much for joining us. It was wonderful having you with us, Alida, and that little wave at the beginning. And you, Gillian Robertson, all the way from Mina Al Arab in Ras Al Khaimah. Wonderful to have you here. And Ronnie, hi Ronnie Abrahams, how are you? Great to have you here. And Corinne, it's always wonderful to have you in the room. I'm really looking forward to today. We meet, in fact, that we all meet. And Marilyn, and I think Alison has gone, and Jim has gone, and there I can see right in the center of my screen, that lovely Dawn Fisher. Hello, Dawn. It's just wonderful that you were with us today. And thank you, Elizabeth, as well, for joining. So, Judy, gosh, in honor of all the wonderfulness in the room and, you know, and that dance of well-being and wellness, can we go over to look at a little bit of the future that we know about? What's coming up next for Edgewalkers?
I'm sitting here over and over trying to let Lewis Griggs back in the room. He's trying so hard to be with us. So Lewis will be in our room in the future. We look forward to that. I just want to thank you, Susan, for such a wonderful space holding of our community. It was your idea that to hold this session where we each get to hear each other's voices more. And part of the future for the Edgewalker community is to hold more of these kinds of sessions while continuing to have our guest speakers and our panels and various topic conversations. We don't have, as at least what I could tell in my records, and I'm traveling, so I'm a little discombobulated, but I don't see on our calendar the September date has been chosen or a topic. So if you're not on the Edgewalker newsletter list, you can go to our www.edgewalkers.org, sign up for our newsletter, and you'll get information about upcoming events. So we will be holding one or maybe even two sessions in September. We're planning on holding 2 sessions most months. Thank you, Shakri. Most months after that, where one session would be a speaker or a panel, and one session would be a community session like this. I remember hearing years ago that the Dalai Lama said, the next Buddha will be the Sangha. And my understanding of that is that humanity is evolving from following single spiritual leaders or political leaders or business leaders, moving from that single person that we learn from and follow to learning from each other collectively, a more collective evolution. And there's groups like this all over the world that are collectively evolving. Chakri in one of his chats talked about Indra's net, and I picture the future as being in those points of light in Indra's net connecting to each other more and more so that the light grows and evolves. So we're doing our part in that, and I know you're all involved in other groups like this. So the more we all do that, the more the future will be bright, even despite what the media may be saying. Also, I want to point out there's a book called The Fourth Turning is Here that just came out that looks, it's a kind of a knowing the future thing. It looks at trends, long trends in collective well-being and harmony, and then dissolution and chaos, and then coming back into order. And I've just started reading it. It looks like it will be quite fascinating and inspiring, because we're at the end of one fourth turning, which is when things start to fall apart, and we're beginning to see the sensing the future that we can't see, that there's something new that can arise and evolve out of all this breakdown. So I look forward to that. The one other thing, in a specific way that is emerging in Edgewalkers, is that every once in a while we do an Edgewalker certification. We now have 21 facilitators who have been certified in Edgewalkers, and several of them are with us or have been with us today, including Peggy and Sandra and Patricia, and of course Susan was one of the first. And I only do it when I get requests, and I've just recently got requests from a couple of people, and when we have a few more, I will plan a course that meets their timelines and needs. So if that's something of interest, where if you're a coach or a trainer and want to get more involved in Edgewalker training and get certified, reach out to me and I can explain to you what it's involved and how that all works. So just let me know. Okay, I think that's it for me, Susan. I'll turn it back over to you and thank you again. Oh, we've talked about adding an Edgewalker skill of space holding, and you've so beautifully and gracefully and lovingly done that for us today, and I'm very grateful.
Well, bless you. Thank you, Judy. Thank you for that wonderful news roundup and all of those other little nuggets that you sprinkled in that space. That was wonderful. And thank you for appreciating me. And I'll take that appreciation and I will then bat it back to all of you. And of course, yes, books are wonderful things, aren't they? And the fourth turning is here, I've heard, is super. Chakri, thank you for putting it in the chat for us all to look. And I just was walking past the bookshop the other day in Ras Al Khaimah, and I saw a little book with a gold cover, which I didn't buy, but it was called Healing is the New High. Healing is the New High. So I think that's quite wonderful too. So I think, look, let's bring to a close. I'm just going to read out the poem just to sort of round in that wonderful bridge that Mary Rita took us across, showing us that the sound of silence indeed speaks volumes as well. Thank you for that, Mary Rita. And here it is. It's not really into wellness, or is it? And it's one that Judy references in the book, and it is, "Come to the edge," he said. And we can't, we're afraid. They responded. "No, come to the edge," he said. No, we can't. We will fall. "Come to the edge," he said. And so they did. And he pushed them and they flew. So please fly off and come back round to us next month. Bye. Or come off mute and say bye. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Hi, everybody.